in this episode.
But if you have the perspective of Jodie Foster trying to figure out, how to catch him, then it becomes Silence of the Lambs.
Or Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, that's like a Death Haven, man. Yeah.
Or the really dark episode of the Dukes of Hazzard.
You're right.
Welcome. You're listening to PaleoCheeze Podcast, Episode 12, Part 1, with author Dan Padavona.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bannister.
And I'm Chad Lutzke.
And you're listening to the PaleoCheeze Podcast, part of the Project Entertainment Network. It's the podcast that tosses film onto the old chaise lounge to discuss and psychoanalyze, and every once in a while to point and laugh at. And Chad, we have an amazing show today, bro. And we've got one of your buddies, a good friend, man.
Yes, Mr. Dan Padavona. Dan is a prolific author who's written in multiple genres, including horror, post-apocalyptic fantasy, I guess maybe you could call it, and crime thriller with books like Crawl Space, Quilt, his Dark Vanishing series, and his most recent Dark Water Cove series. Dan also wrote the foreword to my first short story collection back in 2015. So we've known each other for a little bit now. So Dan, thanks for coming on and hanging out with us, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Jeremiah, was there something that you wanted to ask him first?
Well, first of all, I got to just admit, man, I haven't read anything of yours, man. And it breaks my heart.
Man.
It does. It breaks my heart. It does. It's killing me. But, this is like, it's one of these experiences, I've been friends with Chad for a long time, but now I'm kind of peeking into his world a little bit. And I'm learning that there are tons of people and there's a whole bunch of books and movies that I've never seen. And I've already thrown out these terribly embarrassing admissions like to Jeremy Wagner and Sadie on from Nightworms over on Twitter about a long list of movies that I've never seen, and specifically horror. And it was so embarrassing that one commenter's like, "What's next? Raiders of the Lost Ark?" And I'm thinking, like, come on, man. I'm an American. I've seen that movie. But the thing is, it's like, so there's a lot of these individuals that I'm learning. Chad, he's a highly connected dude. But as I'm, going in and I'm learning all these individuals and I'm learning about things that they've written, and I go and I'm doing my homework, man. And I check out your website, and I just thought it was so awesome. A number of things, and we learned one actually in the studio right before, when we're kind of in the back room there, the green room, about how you were on AM/FM radio. I was on AM/FM radio. And so that was awesome. But I learned something, man, about you, and I just had to say it. You love Renaissance fairs.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yes.
And we just got the news like in the last 2 weeks that the big one up here that we have every summer is done. It's canceled. Maybe next year. I don't know. I don't know what their financial situation is, but I have a hard time seeing them coming out of this very well, unfortunately. And it's great. I mean, we've been going since the mid 90s. Actually, no, we've been going since the late 80s. So like 30 years we've been going to this thing. And it's really sad that it's just not happening this year. And I don't know when it'll happen again.
It's so crazy that you say that, because I bring this up in part because of something else, and I'll mention it later. But my daughter had brain cancer. She passed away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But when she was going through all of that, my friend, he put together. He was an announcer. I met him at journalism school, and he was on radio with me and stuff. And he was an announcer for this football team, this local football team. And they were bringing in all these people to do a fundraiser for her, a benefit. And it was a medieval festival. So I have to be strict about this. It's not a Renaissance festival. It's a medieval festival.
It's different. Yep.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah. And so, but they come in and we had no idea, no clue. And all of a sudden there's all these people with swords and bows and arrows and daggers and, armor and horses. I mean, it was insane. And they were real sword fighting. I mean, sparks flying everywhere. One guy hurt his hand a little bit. And then they got on their knee. And they were talking about how they've heard, of her fame from afar, and they've long wanted to find this princess of their land, right? And that they wanted to coronate her. And so we ended up going, it was called Blackrock. and it was totally awesome. Smaller, right? It wasn't one of these huge ones. It was small, kind of in this beautiful grove and stuff. And we went for a couple years. She died. She went that year, and then the following year she wasn't able to go because it got so bad, and she passed away shortly after that, or shortly before that. We were able to go in her honor. But the thing is, though, is that it played such a huge role in our lives, and then all of a sudden this year we find out a bunch of financial stuff, but they're done. They're done. And so again, man, I'm sorry to hear that, but I actually relate to that too. I relate to the bummer, man. But you were going for like 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that we went every year. There were times where like I wasn't even living in the state, but we went probably, I would say conservatively, at least half of those years, and I would say probably more like 2/3. It was a weird way to get into Renaissance fairs in the mid and late 1980s. I became somewhat of a huge computer gamer on the old 8-bit Commodore 64.
Yes,
used to play these. He used to play these role-playing games, and there was this game called Ultima that I would stay up so late playing at night that I almost flunked out of college. I just play it, and suddenly I'd look at the window and it's like, oh, the sun's up. Maybe I should go to bed. So, but I was so into it. And my girlfriend, then who's my wife now, was like, we should go to the Renaissance Fair. And I'm like, what the hell's the Renaissance Fair? And she was explaining to me, and I'm like, oh, that's like the games. We got to go.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And it was more than that, but we love it. And we've actually met like some of the actors who put it on, and they're just great people, and they really believe in what they do. And I'm just hoping that it manages to survive this summer of COVID, and we get a vaccine and that comes back next year. It's just, it's a bummer. I mean, how much have we suffered over the last 4 or 5 months, just trying to do our best to distance and give up things, and we're losing businesses that are never going to come back.
Right.
And that's the scary part.
Yeah.
I've only been to one Renaissance fair. I went to, I think it was called Silverleaf. I think that's one of the bigger ones, but I'm not really sure.
When I was, the first time I went, I'm not going to lie, man, never went to anything like that ever. And we are surprised by these people at this football game, and they take us off guard because the next day was like the coronation. Okay. So we were like, oh, I guess we're going to stay another day and go to this thing early in the morning. It was super, super hot, man. And we get there and all these people are coming in and they're all dressed all crazy, man. And I'm not anticipating. It's like going to a rave the first time and seeing people with pacifiers in their mouths. You're like, what is this? But it was this kind of weirdness that was going on. And I wanted the heck out of there. I'm not even going to lie. I was like, this is like nerddom, dude. Like I am way deep at this point. But then they bring her out because they brought her in the back, and they bring her on. They open up the main gate, and it's this big wooden gate, and they open that thing, and it's all creaky, and there's these knights holding it and stuff. And they all come out, and she's walking down the middle. She's got kind of a limp from paralysis and stuff. She's walking down the middle, and they're all surrounding her, and then they're on their knees and they're coronating her. And bro, I cried my brains out, man. And I was immediately in love with these people. I'm like, I love you guys. And it just turned into this thing where over the years, ever since, they were at her funeral. People can see it online. They're singing at the end. They all come slowly up as the song is going at the end, and it was planned. But they all come up the aisles in this big, huge church, historical building. Come up the front, and by the end, there's 40 of these people up in the front. Vikings and everything, and they've got their alcohol up and everything, and they're singing this song about saying farewell, and it was so powerful as the casket's leaving. Friends for a lifetime, and I realized, a lot of them. I mean, there's people who go just to see the fun or the jousting and stuff, but there are some folks, man. I mean, it's legit for real. Like they identify with that. And some of them to the point where they make their own costumes. It's a whole different world, man. And I'm nerded out now. I'm like, I've got my own get-ups. I've got two or three different things that I can wear. I'm a duke when I'm there. I have the key to the jail. I'm kind of a mischievous duke. I'm a Duke of Hazzard, but like,
so that's bad, dude.
It's real bad. I've been saving that one up for a long time for a day just like this, Chad. But no, but I have the key, because when all that happened, they said, you guys have the key to our hearts, and they gave me the key to the jail, so I can go at any time, and so I can go and kind of sneak some people out sometimes. But it's so much fun. I didn't anticipate going on so long about this, but I read that and I said, I don't see that enough in interviews that people have or in bios and stuff. And I said, man, he's putting it out there. I gotta talk to this guy about Renaissance fairs, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we're just kind of hoping to come back.
Yes, fingers crossed, man.
So Dan, I noticed a change in your writing in the last I guess couple of years now. You're very I know you're very passionate about like Stephen King and slasher type things, and you paid homage to some of that stuff in your writing with like Storeberry and Quilt and Crawl Space and Dark Vanishing. I was just wondering what made you decide to start doing the crime thing. Was it something that you just started becoming interested in, or were you hoping to maybe get a little bit more notice? Or
I'm not sure exactly what precipitated all of it. If you look through my backlist, I mean, clearly the book that I wrote, Her Shallow Grave, which was once Severity, which you edited, is a psychological thriller, pretty much like what I'm writing now. And I made the mistake of not recognizing it as such. And I marketed it as a horror novel.
Yeah.
Put a horror novel cover on it, gave it a horror novel name, and I could tell from the beginning it just wasn't clicking. It wasn't clicking with my readers. It wasn't clicking on Amazon. It was going to be a dud. And the minute that I decided to embrace what it really was and give it a psychological thriller cover and name, the sales immediately picked up. No great shakes. I had already kind of killed it with my horrible release strategy, but it was definitely coming back a little bit. And I also thought too that Dark Vanishings is just such a weird anthology or series that I wrote. It's got a lot of thriller in it. It's some horror, it's some adventure, it's some fantasy, and I think it's a lot of thriller. And so I think I was kind of heading down that thriller path anyway. And I happen to be working with a couple authors who I like, and it's a couple years ago now. And I remember saying, I'm really starting to get down on writing. I mean, I'm not getting anywhere. I put out new books and I'm spinning my wheels and I'm making the same couple $100 a month or whatever. And I just feel like I'm not getting anywhere. No new books are pushing me up into a different level. And one of them just replied to me, you are aware that there isn't a single category of horror right now which anybody's buying on Amazon. And I just kind of looked at him and it's like, oh, okay. And you can prove this. And he could, because he had like that K-Lytics software. And basically, if you weren't Dean Koontz or you weren't Stephen King, you were not selling horror at that moment. I mean, there's a few indies out there. If you check the charts, they're doing pretty well. But even a lot of them, I look at them and I'm like, well, that's really not horror that they're writing. I think they're kind of writing other stuff and marketing it as horror and kind of dominating the category because there's not much competition. So he basically said, you should really think about doing something else. And he said, you've written thrillers, right? And I said, yeah, I sort of. He said, well, maybe go down that path. Other writers who do much better than I do have talked about this. So this is not by any means something which I'm coming up with on my own. But, the idea was that if you want to maintain your artistic integrity, and you want to increase your sales, you need to find the happy medium between the two. And what you do is you think of things like a Venn diagram. You've got this one circle which has everything that you love to write. And this can be anything from like genre to characters to situations. And then you've got this other circle, which represents everything that you love to read that also does well. And that's important that it also does well, that people are actually buying it. And it has to mesh. It has to be something that you like to read as well, and that you may like to write in the future. So for me, I mean, I look at there's a lot of steamy romance, which absolutely dominates Amazon, and is pretty much money in the bank. But I don't like that to write that type of stuff, and I wouldn't even consider it.
Right.
And I started thinking about like thrillers, and okay. So what am I going to do? Am I going to write like a Jason Bourne type thing here? Am I going to go down like the Mark Dawson route or something like that? And I started to think about it. I says, well, what are my favorite books? And I had just recently reread the first 2 books in the Thomas Harris series, the Hannibal Lecter stuff, and come back to the realization of how much I love those 2 books, Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs. They're just such masterpieces, which straddle the line between horror and thriller, and it just clicked. I said, well, I write about serial killers all the time. Why am I not writing serial killer thrillers? And so I decided, okay, let's go down the psychological thriller serial killer route, and I can keep a lot of what I'm already doing, add in like somewhat of like police procedural or FBI procedural type background to it. And now I've got something which is the a better backbone for getting my name out there. And then it just became a combination of really good covers, really working hard on the descriptions, and then learning advertising. And that's like a daily learning process, and being willing to lose some money along the way too. But once I figured it out and started to get on a roll, I realized I've got something here. And then the best feedback you can get on a series is that as soon as you put out book 2 after book 1, people buy it. Mm-hmm. And then you put out book 3 and it's like, boom, it's just, everybody who bought book 2 is buying book 3. And that's what I'm seeing with Darkwater Cove. And there's really no reason to go back at this point, because I love what I'm doing. I love writing every day. These stories are just a ton of fun, and people are embracing it. And I really don't see where my writing is that much different than what I was doing before. Although you pull back, you don't do all the blood, all the gore, and you don't quite hit them with the horror as hard as you did before. But I still go for a lot of the creepy scenes. I still do a lot of stalk. And it's just that the people now are like, wow, where have you come from? And it's working out for me.
That's great to hear. I'm really glad to hear that. What you said about you're writing the same thing. I haven't read any of that new stuff. And so I can see that, man. Yeah. Like basically if the Darkwater Cove stuff is just like Crawl Space or Quilt, but it's marketed different,
Well,
different,
sort of. I wouldn't go that far, because it's like, you read Crawl Space and it's like, okay, this is definitely a horror novel. This is something that it's, something a Richard Lehman, Jack Ketchum type book from back in the day. It's very bare bones, and it's very horrifying at times. Whereas Darkwater Cove is more like, okay, now I'm seeing things from the perspective of like maybe an investigator or whatnot. It's almost like Hannibal Lecter, you set him in a house and he starts murdering teenagers, and you've got Halloween. But if you have the perspective of Jodie Foster trying to figure out, how to catch him, then it becomes Silence of the Lambs. I should say Buffalo Bill in that case, but
or Murder She Wrote. Or Murder. It's like that's like a Death Haven, man.
Yeah. Or the really dark episode of the Dukes of Hazzard.
You're right.
The one they banned.
It's funny when you were talking about bad marketing and stuff. I'd love to hear that too. But like as soon as you said that, I was thinking smoke signals. Like that would have to be the worst idea, for marketing. But in reality, though, being serious, something you said that I think is really cool, because we've had other people on, and they're most of them have been writers, and a lot of times for them it is, do what you love, and there is a real value to that. But sometimes, if people just do what they love, and not do what they must, sometimes there's this idea almost that those two things are inherently antithetical, and that they can't actually coalesce. That if you figured out a way, for example, to do things that you must, to continue doing things that you want, and that those two things can actually harmonize, and that you can write in this way, and it's more mass marketable. You're seeing bigger gains in what you're doing, and it allows you to continue and to expand on that creative dynamic that you have as a writer. And I don't know. I thought it was just such a cool thing to think about. And it's a little bit of a different twist than what a lot of other individuals that, and that works for them. I mean, there's all different. I got that book, Being a Writer. It's got a whole bunch of different writers' suggestions and stuff. And one thing I've learned is that there is no one thing that just works. They're all different, man. It's different for different people. And so to hear that from you, it's really encouraging, because, I've said this before. Chad and I, we've had conversations about this. I spent all my time for years of my life talking politics and religion and culture and debate stuff and all that. And this is not that. Okay. But at the same time, we talk about analysis. We analyze books, literary criticism. We talk about culture. We talk about symbolism, and all of these things that are kind of in the background, even soundtracks, right? Music, composition. And so our art, all of these things. And that to me is a way where, it may not be what I've loved strictly for a long time, but I'm finding that what I'm doing right now, I love this. Like I've told Chad, I said, I want to be those old dudes on a porch, man, like making podcasts, and at 80 years old. I do, man. I love it. And so I'm encouraged by what you said. That's the long and short of that. Is I'm just really encouraged by what you said.
I think the Venn diagram approach is really important, so that you continue to write something that you love. But there's also, absolutely, if you aren't that concerned with commercial success and all you care about is the art, then more power to you, and just write purely what you love, and don't worry about the sales. Worry about the fact that, people who read your books love what you're writing, and just share it with them. To me, I hit a point in my life where I had been writing for 6 years, I guess, and I can't say that that's a very long time in this business. It's not. But when you're working a full-time job on the side and you've got 2 kids and a wife, and you like all these other recreational activities, at some point, if it's not paying the bills or paying a bill, why am I going to keep doing this? Because, literally I was spending, maybe an hour and a half in front of the keyboard writing, and then, another hour trying to figure out marketing ideas. But by the time that I'm done with all this, what do I have to show for it? And I'm losing out on all this free time, all this stuff that I could be doing. So I started looking at it kind of almost like, career perspective. This has to pay me. If I'm going to continue to write at this level and write these many books, it has to pay me. So I got a lot more serious about what I was doing. I tried to formulate a plan, and, I tried to stay within a scope where I would not only love what I'm doing still, and it would also be relatable to people who came to my books from horror. They already knew me from Camp Slasher or Crawl Space. And so it's not that much of a shock when they pick up Darkwater Cove.
Yeah, I'll admit to really struggling with trying to market my own stuff, because there's no niche for it. And I've been torn between, I've entertained the idea so many times of even writing to market, because like you, it's like fun to write, but I'm not one of these people who are like, if I didn't have writing, I would die. I live to write. That's not me. I want money. I want to be able to quit my job. But, artistic integrity also is what stands in my way, because I want to do it my way, and I want to write what I want to write about, and write for me, hoping that there will be people out there that I will find those people and enough of them to where that I can quit and just write for me. But yeah, I mean, I've toyed around with all kinds of I could never write something like science fiction or fantasy. I haven't read enough of that, and especially science fiction. And the people that devour those, they would tear me up because I don't know the rules,
Yeah.
And so I stick to anything that might have to do with just real life relationships, whether that be something horrifying, but like, I think I could pull off like a romance. I mean, I kind of wrote one, but it was like a tragic romance thing, but I think I could maybe pull up, but then is the fun gone after that? And is it just a job just like the one that I have?
Right.
Between the Sheets is a lot of fun, Chad.
Between.
Yeah, what did we say? What did we say that I've called it, man? Was it Between the Sheets?
Beneath the
sheets.
the stirring sheets.
Yeah, beneath the stirring sheets.
Beneath the stirring gray sheets?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
yeah, and I think I prefaced one of those with saying it's my favorite book I've ever read. No. Yeah. And then I just say the wrong name. No.
What are you reading right now, Jeremiah?
Me?
Yeah.
Man, I ain't reading jack, dude. I'm not reading anything. No, it's been so depressing this whole week. Well, no.
You haven't had time.
I haven't had time. Bonker Town, dude, in the Bannister house. I've been super dupes busy. I read passages from the Bible with the kids because we're doing a thing as a family where it's kind of a storyline and you kind of follow a different thing every day. And so you do it for 90 days. It's a whole bunch of fun. And difficult. It's challenging, but you read reflections and stuff, but nothing fiction. And so it's really been bumming me out, man. But I anticipate once the Lansdale, because this is recording after the Lansdale podcast will have been put out there. So now that the Lansdale podcast has been published, I'm going to have more free time. Okay, so we just had a whole bunch of stuff, because we actually took a week off where we gave ourselves a little bit of time, which was a little sad, man. I was a sad panda, not gonna lie. I was like, man, dude, you get used to doing these recordings and then you don't do them. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, I get the night off. And then you kind of like look at the clock and you're like, where's Chad? You're bummed out, but I've been watching. At night. Okay. Once all the work is done and everything else, I'm not even reading news hardly. I mean, just nothing. And so, but at night when I go upstairs, I've watched a couple different movies. Of course, watched the one we're going to talk about today, and we'll have a lot to say about that. But I also watched Frailty. I'd seen that before. Okay, but I watched that.
Good one.
Such a good one.
Like that one.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Absolutely love it. And I mentioned this before that my family, we really love Super Friends. Like it's very nostalgic for our family, the cartoon, and we watched every single episode they ever made of all the different variations of that show, which had all these different rebirths, like they're like, rebooting it and it's a different name and it's longer and then it's shorter again with different. So it was always changing, but we love it. And so we're looking up, what are other cartoons like that? And we found a Batman one from the 1960s and went and watched it. It's good, but it's not Super Friends. It's not even the same kind of style. Like there's certain elements that are so different. And so my kids were kind of bummed a little bit, right? They still like it, but it was just like, man. So I had this great idea. I said, I remember telling Lansdale that I used to, when I was growing up, I'd put that Talk Boy device from Home Alone. And I would put that thing right next to the TV during dinner because on, I think it was FX at the time. Like it was first out and stuff. I didn't even think the Shield was on yet, but they would play Batman, right, with Adam West. And I would record that during dinner. And then after dinner, I'd stop it. And at night when I go to bed, I'd play it. And it was like listening to old time radio to go to bed. And so I said, man, I bet you they'd love that. Oh my gosh, dude. They are freaks for that show. They love it. They just consume it like crazy. And they love all the characters, with the exception of, I think, Pharaoh. I don't know if this is his name, or King Tut. They don't like King Tut. I don't really care for him either. But, they like all these different characters. They love the show. They love the colors and everything. And it's such a good show and it's so ridiculous and even a little bit charming, maybe. But it's also like there are certain things that adults, maybe at the time it was risque, you know what I mean? I got the go-go girls and stuff every once in a while. And Adam West, his dancing is extremely scandalous, as well as Robin's costume. But the thing is, oh, it's so true. It's so, but like it's pretty tame. It's innocent. There's an innocence to that show. So I'm not even worried. Like, I don't even think like I better check the parental guide for this and figure it out. Just let that bugger run, man. It's probably more innocent than watching Dora. I mean, I'm like, for real, this is like super, super child friendly. And so but it's been awesome, man. And so even though I haven't been able to finish the books I've been wanting to finish and everything else, I got some on the agenda. Being able to watch that with the kids after a long day's work has been a huge payoff. But I don't know, man. That's me, dude. What about you?
Reading, I just finished The Hanover Block by Gregor Zane. Very bizarre. All of the books, there's like I think there's going to be 4 of these. I think 3 of them are out now. And I ended up it's pretty good. I'm not really going to say what it's about, but it's not full on Bizarro, maybe Bizarro light. But the first half reminded me a little bit of J. David Osborne's Black Gum, and what's the one he wrote, the sequel to Black Gum, A Minor Storm. Kind of reminded me of that, but a lot less drugs in it. And so I went ahead and I bought the second one, Brides of Hanover Block, which is another weird, strange sculpture that looks kind of like a phallic-y thumb or something. I'm not really sure what it is, but my wife hates these
phallic-y thumb.
She hates these covers. And I had them sitting out, and she was doing some artwork and looked over and saw it and flipped it over so she didn't have to see it. And I actually talked to Gregor yesterday because we were on a podcast together talking about self-publishing in small indie publishing. And I told him about that. He said, yeah, his wife doesn't like him either. He won't even read him. So but that's basically what I've been reading. Actually, I started reading Paul Tremblay's A Head Full of Ghosts, which I've heard good things about. And to be honest with you, I've kind of stayed away from it. The whole possession stuff freaks me out, man. Like The Exorcist. And if anything can give me the heebie-jeebies. A lot of horror movies don't, but that kind of stuff does. But I'm about 30% in, and I'm enjoying it. I have never read anything by Tremblay before, but I have a couple of his books. Just hadn't read anything yet. What about yourself, Dan? What have you been reading, watching, listening to, whatever?
Well, first I'll just say that that's a great book. I loved that book. And I'll give you fair warning too if you decide to move on from that and read Disappearance at Devil's Rock. Mm-hmm. If you have a teenage son, it's going to be really difficult to read. Really difficult to read. Okay. Or actually a teenage kid at all. So he has a way of really ripping at your heartstrings, as well as freaking you out too. So. Mm-hmm. He's straddling an interesting line, and I think that you'll see it as you get farther into that book. I just finished Devoted by Dean Koontz, which again featured a hero dog.
That was my next question.
Which I absolutely love because I love dogs, and he's wearing it on his heart sleeve now. He's just like, every book is just going to have this hero dog in it, and this one was a really special superpower hero dog, so I was loving every second of it. Had a great time with that, and it's very well written, as all of Koontz's books are, and it just is one of the, again, he manages to straddle that horror thriller line, so well. And also I read Losing Leah Holloway by Lisa Reagan, who's a psychological thriller writer, and that's the second book in a very short series that she wrote, and it was really disturbing at times, and excellent. And she's one of the more talented in that genre, and certainly one of the people I look up to.
When you said dogs, man, I thought that you were. I was like, is he breaking that line that you said you wouldn't do? if it was about a book where the victim or something terrible happened to a dog. You know what I mean? So when you said hero dog, I was like, oh, okay, good. You know, because you mentioned too,
Kuntz is never going to kill a dog in a book.
You mentioned too with not writing a book about anything to do with cancer. And by the way, about your wife, congratulations. As it's awesome to hear stories of people. Yes, survivor. Yeah, big time, man. So big, huge supporter, okay, of that kind of stuff. But I'm writing a book about that right now. So when I read that, I was like, I understand, man. Like, this is painful to do. This is not, it's fun and it's charming and cute and stuff. But I'm with you, man. And there's no dead dogs in the book. That's one thing. Okay, there's none of that, because I mean that would be like insult to injury already. You know what I mean? But I'm glad to hear it was a hero dog.
Yeah. I haven't read anything new from Kuntz in a long time. Like any of the books that people are complaining about, I haven't read. As a matter of fact, I think the newest book I read from him was Intensity, which is one of my favorite books of all time.
Oh yeah,
Intensity was it was intense. I mean, it was couldn't put it down, and just nonstop. I don't think I've ever read anything quite as thrilling as that book, as far as just something just constantly going. And
was eventually, in my opinion, ripped off by Hot Tension.
Oh, I mean, it was
badly.
When I was watching that, I mean, up to a certain point, it's scene for scene,
except for the stupid swerve. Yeah.
And I mean, I love that movie, but for sure, I just couldn't believe that they kind of got away with that. But yeah, when I saw it, I was like, wait a minute, is this just a what was it, French version of Intensity or something that I'm watching here? Because this is the exact thing that happens in the book. But yeah,
exactly.
Somehow they got away with that. So Jeremiah, are you watching anything at least? Well, other than Super Friends, you said Super Friends, but
yeah.
Any other movies other than Just Before Dawn?
Well, I'll tell you, no, not yet. But see, the master is putting together, Mr. Jeremy Wagner, is putting together a list of classic horror must-see films. And so, because I've admitted, man, it's a ridiculous list. I mean, people can go on Twitter. I think PaleoCheeze retweeted it, and it got some flack, because it's like I'm oblivious. And I told people, I said, growing up, I really only saw 2 movies that were horror films. I've never seen, I'll just throw this out there, I've never seen It. I never saw Jaws until recently, when I made the reaction video of Jaws. Never saw it.
Dude, you haven't seen Evil Dead?
I haven't seen Evil Dead. I haven't seen Army of Darkness. I haven't seen, now I did see The Exorcist, but that was when I was older. I was probably in my late 20s, I think, when I saw that. I was born in 78. So I mean, I was a little late to the party. Same with Omen. It was around kind of the same time. But never saw Poltergeist. Plan on watching that. The only movies that I can really say, and this is silly, but it's true, I've never seen the entire way through any of the Freddy movies and none of the Friday the 13th movies. Never. I've seen Halloween. I think I saw one, the original. But again, that was in my 20s. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I actually started watching anything that was really scary, except for the movie Fortress. And that's another one that's kind of like hard to find, about the kids in that school, and all of a sudden there's a dude in a Santa Claus mask outside the window with a shotgun, and they're like freaking out, and they look over and there's a dude in a rat mask and a cat mask with the shotguns. They kidnap the kids and bring them out to a mountain and put them in a cave, and you see it's got a skin scene in it, right? Followed by a dreadfully terrifying scene with the grandmother next to old Santa face. I saw that. It traumatized me for at least a year. But I also saw, and I would categorize this as horror. I know some people might say, well, come on. But look, it depends on where you're coming from. But the Thief in the Night series, right? When you got, I'm dead serious, dude. When you think about it, you got scenes with the government coming after everybody, and everybody's got to get tattoos on their forehead, and if they don't get tattoos on their forehead, they can't buy anything. And then they're told that if they don't get it, that they're tracked down by the military, brought into a jail cell, put in these gowns. And you've got that scene, man, with this little kid and the mom and the dad, the mom, and then there's a guy, he's not really the dad, but he's kind of the fatherly figure now that the rapture happened and everybody's vanished and stuff. And they're sitting there and they come up and they're like, "Are you ready to take the mark, little boy, the tattoo on your forehead?" And he's like, they're like, "Don't do it," and they give him a balloon or whatever. And he walks out and he looks back and everything. And the music starts playing, people get ready and all this. And they're looking out the window and you hear the guillotine. And yes, they got a straight up guillotine with a little basket for the heads to plop into. And the guillotine comes down, and as the music's playing, man, that little red balloon goes flying up in the air, dude. And I'm like 10 watching that. And I'm surrounded by people who are like, "This is happening." I'm like, no. So, I mean, that scared the living daylights out of a man, dude, a little guy. And it freaked me out. And so I know some people, well, that's not really, but depending on where you're coming from and depending on what world you're in, and stuff like that, that was it. But other than that, man, I really was completely oblivious. So he's putting together a class syllabus, man, for me and Sadie, actually, because I guess Sadie hasn't seen a lot of certain films too, Sadie Hartman, and so he's putting something together. We're classmates in this, man, and so we're gonna watch a bunch of those films. But I haven't done it yet. I haven't gotten it yet. So Jeremy, get on it, man. I'm waiting, buddy.
Well, I just finished the second season of Dead to Me. Have you seen that, Dan, on Netflix?
Nope.
Oh, man. Talk about some good writing. That is an excellent show with incredible acting in it. It's got those kind of like cliffhangers at the end of episodes that like annoy you because they're such a cliffhanger. And it's like, man, you're really doing it. You're making me at least watch the next 5 minutes of the next episode, and I need to go to bed. Yeah. I finished that. Great show. And then I watched a movie that I had heard of called The Boy, and I hadn't seen it. It was way better than I thought it was going to be. Really, really enjoyed it. Great horror movie. It had some cool, kind of twists in it and stuff. And yeah, really, I recommend that, man. It was good. I gave it like a personal, I think 4 stars or something like that. And then I watched a movie yesterday called Z, which I was not that impressed with. That's on Shudder. The first half was cool. Couple creepy scenes. Second half completely fell apart. Very cliche. Some CGI that just ruined some things. And yeah, so I don't really recommend that. And I watched a movie from the 70s called Squirm, which was written and directed by the guy who did Just Before Dawn.
That's right.
So yeah, Squirm was cool, man. I can, there's something about movies done in the 70s and 80s. I really don't care if they're bad. I will enjoy them. Just that aesthetic, the music, being born in 1970, it just takes me back to being a kid. And, so there really isn't, when I watch something like in the 80s, something really bad, like, I don't know, Microwave Massacre or something that's just horrendously bad. Nobody should be watching. I'm loving it, but it's nothing that I'm recommended. I recognize that I'm loving this for a certain reason. I'm loving it because it's very nostalgic for me. Like I said, aesthetically and the music and just some of the hokiness. So anything you've been checking out, Dan, watching?
I've probably been all over the board. My wife and I are binge watching. I'm way behind on this, but we're binge watching Parks and Recreation.
Yeah,
it's a great show.
Yes, man. Yes.
Everybody told me, well, it's if you like The Office, you're going to like Parks and Rec, but we put it off for a long time. And as soon as we started to watch it, it's like, oh my God, this is gold. It is so funny. So it's just killing me. So that's like my comic relief. I don't usually watch shows, although I do have YouTube TV. I almost never watch the first run stuff because I can't stand dealing with commercials. So now that Better Call Saul's last season popped up on Netflix, I'm watching that, which is just the writing and the cinematography. I mean, everything is just gorgeous in that show. I love the characters. So I'm melting in that for now as well. Been going back and watching some old school movies, including the one we'll talk about today, Just Before Dawn. Some of the more cheesy type stuff from the 80s I've been watching. Just I think because of all this going on in the world, I've needed an escape and needed to remember the way life was, when I was younger and had fewer worries. And of all things too, I tried to go back and watch one of my favorite movies from I guess it was circa 89 or 90 or 91, the Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. And I've always been a huge hip hop fan, and that movie just resonated so much with me when I first saw it. And I started to watch it, and I got so depressed because I realized that nothing has changed. It's been, it's been over 30 years, and the same goddamn things are still happening, and the same prejudices are still out there. And I couldn't watch it anymore. I just turned it off, and it's like, and it's not because, I just can't man up and get through it. It's like, I just gave up, because when I walked out of that theater, I remember walking out feeling like, our generation is going to change a lot of things. And now I'm seeing my kids' generation. I'm wondering, well, are they going to change anything? Because ours didn't.
It's interesting, talking about the need to escape. And I'm with you on the need to escape. With things going on in the world, being locked down for so long, and, work all around the place and stuff. And I normally have, a book to dive into or something like that, or I find myself lost, and I haven't even been watching Lost. I haven't even, we kind of suspended that thing. We were watching, we got to, I forget what season, man. I'm pretty deep into it though.
And you call yourself a Duke of Hazzard.
Yeah. Oh, I do, man. But I'm just, the thing is, I'm so, it's so difficult that I said, man, I need to escape. And I kind of that thing, to maybe watch something that's a little bit goofy, or maybe even outside the wheelhouse a little bit. And, but see, here's the thing, man, I learned when I did this, because I was like, well, my wife, I'll follow my wife's lead on this. She wants to watch this movie. It's on, I think, Netflix or something, or Amazon Prime. And so we go on there, and she's watching and stuff. And I realized, Chad, that, there are some movies that really are just very bad, and maybe that nobody should watch them. And I'm sorry to step on certain toes, and I'm sure that I will. But dude, I'm sorry, man. I thought Captain Marvel sucked. I really hated it. And I felt badly because I'm like, we don't do Marvel movies on this show, right? Ever. That's kind of actually maybe kind of a rule that we have. They were like, but I like comic books, man. I'm a big comic guy. I like, I like the whole thing, and we watch all of them, but I hadn't seen it yet. And I remember hearing the hubbub about it, so I've heard people's takes, and I think a lot of that's politically motivated and politically driven. You know what I mean? On both sides, like the criticism and the praise, especially having seen it now, because my criticisms are not the same as a lot of the other people. I just thought it was a bad movie. I thought so much in it was like, what am I watching? Like, what is this? And it was hard to take it too seriously. I was getting frustrated, man. And, again, maybe somebody can convince me otherwise, but my eyes have seen what my eyes have seen. And that just initial gut thing, and people have different tastes and different palates and tolerance levels and stuff like that. And so, I mean, people like different stuff. But as for me, I sat there and I was like, bro, dude, no. And it actually made me kind of sad. It's kind of like the Ghostbusters thing. I was actually hoping that Ghostbusters movie that was really controversial would be super dope, and I could just go and watch it and be like, Maha! Or that Doctor Who, the new Doctor Who, would be just mega dope, mind-blowing, epic awesomeness. And I'm all pumped, and I go and I watch it, and I'm like, oh man, no, this is not good. And so it kind of broke my heart a little bit, but I can say I've seen it. And I could say positive things. I won't do it right now. We're not reviewing that film. So I don't need to do it right now, man. I'll leave that one for the cutting room floor. But I saw it, and it was an escape, all right. I was escaping big time. So but yeah, Captain Marvel, bro.
Speaking of reviews then.
Yes.
Let's get to Just Before Dawn.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Wild Speculation, a podcast where each episode is a short story that explores one of the many strange, wonderful, and sometimes disturbing worlds of speculative fiction. You can find us at wildspeculation.buzzsprout.com, on the Project Entertainment Network, and wherever else you find podcasts. So sit back, enjoy the story, and let your imagination run wild.